Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world. One quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Friday, 18th July, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China faces economic headwinds stemming from weak domestic demand and sluggish household spending. To counter this, China is planning increased consumption incentives to bolster its service sector over the next 5 years. This strategy prioritizes domestic demand as a driver of economic growth, especially given uncertainty in international trade. Commerce Minister Wang Wentao has voiced China's desire to restore healthy U.S. trade relations, emphasizing the enduring economic partnership despite past strains, even drawing comparisons between U.S. and Chinese consumption patterns. Simultaneously, China has been reducing its holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds for the third consecutive month in May, hitting a low not seen since March 2009, amid escalating trade tensions with Washington and concerns over U.S. fiscal policy. The potential return of a fentanyl issue to the U.S.-China trade agenda is also noted. In a security context, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian has advocated for enhanced regional anti-terror cooperation to safeguard regional security following the U.S. designation of the Resistance Front as a global terror outfit. The Ministry of State Security has accused foreign spy agencies of attempting to steal rare earths, warning that foreign agents are exploiting China's postal system for this purpose, and has pledged to crack down on infiltration and espionage targeting these minerals and smuggling channels. China's dominance in the rare earth minerals market, sourced significantly from Myanmar, is causing environmental concerns in Thailand. The Education Ministry has issued a safety warning for Chinese students in the Philippines, citing a series of criminal incidents targeting Chinese nationals. Turning to technological and industrial developments, China's autonomous vehicle companies are expanding globally due to increasing commercial barriers within China. Chinese scientists are designing a Super X railgun, aiming to double the power of existing railguns by cross-stacking 2 railguns into one. OpenAI's decision to block developers in China from using its GPT models has spurred China to pursue open-source AI to gain market share. Shanghai is expanding its shipyards on Changxing Island to create a world-class shipbuilding hub, focusing on high-value vessels like Endane and container transport ship. The failed Yaohan Longevity City project in Gongchengyao Autonomous County of Guilin is being cited as an example of grassroots government mismanagement and significant waste of resources. Following the death of Zhang Qingyao, founder of Hangzhou Waha Group Company Limited, the company's future leadership is uncertain. Imperial tombs in China have been recognized as new UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The nation's military readiness for war is also being questioned, focusing on how President Xi Jinping's purges impact Beijing's ambition. Taiwan's Vice President Xiaobi Kim has affirmed that Taiwan will not provoke confrontation with China and seeks communication with Beijing based on parity and respect, reiterating Mr. Li's offer for talk. Taiwan is also increasing its annual drills against invasion from mainland China, which are intersecting with civilian life. In the United States, the Resistance Front has been labeled as a global terror outfit. Microsoft will cease using engineers in China for U.S. military tech support, prompting U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to order a review of Pentagon cloud deals. The U.S. and Chinese film industries have a long history with shifting power dynamics, noting China's growing box office revenue. Meanwhile, in Brazil, former President Jair Bolsonaro has positioned himself as the figure best suited to renegotiate U.S. tariffs, curb Chinese influence, and defeat leftists in Brazil. Finally, in Australia, after President Donald Trump cancelled talks with Anthony Albanese, China hosted the Australian leader this week, with Xi Jinping, Li Qiang, and Jodie Hayden attending various meetings and banquets. United States. The Trump administration destroyed $9.70 million worth of contraceptives intended for women in Africa, including long-acting IUDs and birth control implants, costing us taxpayers $167,000. Donald Trump is suing Rupert Murdoch and Wall Street Journal reporters for libel and slander, seeking at least $10 billion damages over a report claiming he sent Jeffrey Epstein a lewd letter and a sketch of a naked woman. The U.S. Attorney General is proposing a change that would give her discretion over who can own firearms among convicted criminals. The U.S. is withdrawing from WHO pandemic response reforms, citing concerns that amendments to global health regulations risk interfering with the U.S.'s sovereign right to make health policy. Some former CICOT detainees could return to the U.S. Fed Chair Jerome Powell is defending against attacks from the Trump administration, which alleged he's mismanaged renovation of the Federal Reserve headquarters. The U.S. has designated the attackers in Pahalgam, Kashmir, as a terrorist organization, stating that the group behind the attack, which killed 26 people, was a front for the Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba. Taiwan avoided tariffs from the U.S. after a 90-day tariff-free grace period expired. The Trump administration had announced worldwide tariffs, including double-digit rates for Taiwan, but later paused most of them. Rail transport companies from China and the U.S. remain committed to strengthening cooperation, including projects in third-country markets. The American sixth-generation fighter jet program F-47 is expected to face development delays due to supply chain challenges, potentially delaying completion of the engine system until 2030. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang stated that the departure of Chinese academics and researchers from the U.S. is a great loss for the United States. Donald Trump expressed gratitude for a USA Today columnist's argument that he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. European Union. The EU is sanctioning a Gujarat refinery in India as part of its efforts to target Russia's energy sector, marking the first time the EU has designated a flag registry and Rosneft refinery. The EU has implemented new sanctions targeting Russia's energy revenue and shadow fleet due to the war in Ukraine. The EU has agreed on an 18th sanctions package on Russia, aimed at further reducing Moscow's income from oil exports to non-EU countries. The European Union has sanctioned two small Chinese banks, Sufini Rural Commercial Bank and Haier Rural Commercial Bank, over aid to Russia. While Foreign Secretary David Lammy announced the exposure of 18 Russian spies and their units responsible for cyber attacks in Britain, which targeted media, telecoms, political institutions, and energy infrastructure. 2 agents were involved in planting spyware on a device used by Yulia Skripal. Day 1241 of Russia's war on Ukraine saw key events unfold, including the story of Valeria, a 21-year-old Ukrainian woman who lost her mother and 11-year-old sister to a Russian missile strike in Kyiv. China. Rail transport companies from China and the U.S. remain committed to strengthening cooperation, including projects in third-country markets. The U.S. consulate in Wuhan, China, has suspended all visa interviews due to unsafe indoor temperatures. The European Union has sanctioned 2 small Chinese banks, Sufini Rural Commercial Bank and Haier Rural Commercial Bank, over aid to Russia. Chinese researchers developed advanced infrared sensors inspired by the fire beetle, potentially leading to a surveillance network more powerful than the proposed US missile defense system. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang stated that the departure of Chinese academics and researchers from the U.S. is a great loss for the United States. Taiwan avoided tariffs from the U.S. after a 90-day tariff-free grace period expired. Middle East. Hezbollah has rejected a U.S. proposal to give up its weapons, dealing a blow to U.S. diplomat Thomas Barrack's efforts to broker peace between Israel and Lebanon. India. The EU is sanctioning a Gujarat refinery in India as part of its efforts to target Russia's energy sector, marking the first time the EU has designated a flag registry and Rosneft refinery. Syria's Swaida province has been rocked by intense clashes between Druze fighters and Bedouin clans, leading to a grim toll of at least 638 deaths, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, SOR. The violence, the most severe since March, included massacres and executions, prompting condemnation from the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, which demanded accountability. Hundreds have been wounded by gunshot wounds and shrapnel, with at least 200 bodies at the Swaida National Hospital. The conflict began after Syrian security forces withdrew from Swaida following Israeli bombardment, pitting armed tribes backed by Syria's Islamist-led government against the Druze community. Neighboring Israel launched airstrikes against Syrian forces to protect the Druze minority before a truce was called. The Druze, a secretive religious group in Syria, Lebanon, and Israel, are navigating regional power dynamics as they balance integration and independence. A ceasefire, brokered by the U.S. between Syria and Israel, has been embraced by Turkey, Jordan, and Syria's neighbors. Syrian government forces are expected to re-enter Swaida province as part of the truce. Turkish President Erdogan has cautioned Russian President Putin that the clashes in Swaida jeopardize the entire region. Meanwhile, following the U.S. lifting of sanctions, American firms are planning to develop a master plan to reconstruct Syria's energy infrastructure, devastated by 14 years of civil war. Israeli military actions in Gaza persist, resulting in 14 reported deaths from airstrikes, artillery shelling, and gunfire north of Khan Yunis. A strike hit Gaza's only Catholic church, causing fatalities and injuries, including to the parish priest. Catholic Latin Patriarch Pier Battista Pizzaballa and Greek Orthodox counterpart Theophilos III visited Gaza to deliver aid and evacuate the injured. Negotiations between Israel and Hamas continue in Doha, focusing on a U.S.-backed 60-day ceasefire proposal. Hamas claims Israel rejected a deal for the release of all captives. Abu Obaida stated there would be no guarantee of returning to partial deals if Israel leaves the negotiating table again. Donald Trump indicated 10 more hostages would be released from Gaza soon, and pushed for the 60-day ceasefire. In the West Bank, Israeli forces allegedly killed a 13-year-old Palestinian child, Nid Jinin, and denied medical treatment. Israel will not renew the visa of the top UN humanitarian official. Eric Kaneko stated visas for UN staff were recently renewed for shorter periods, and access requests to Gaza were denied from multiple agencies. International criticism of Israel's actions in Gaza is growing, especially from states in the global south. A new Freedom Flotilla vessel, named Handala, is carrying activists and humanitarian aid. The head of the Bureau of Consular Affairs testified that his office weighed criticism of Israel when determining whether to deny or revoke student visas, referring to a pro-Palestinian demonstration at Dartmouth College. Turning to the United States, Donald Trump directed his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to seek the release of grand jury testimony related to Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking case. Finally, the European Union is facing criticism for not doing more to sanction Israel, despite its economic influence and its own rule. Brazil is seeing increased scrutiny of former President Jair Bolsonaro, who is under investigation for allegedly attempting a coup after his defeat in the 2022 election. The Supreme Federal Court has responded with search warrants and restraining orders, restricting Bolsonaro's movements and communications. These measures include an electronic ankle monitor, limited time away from home, social media restrictions, and a ban on contacting other individuals under investigation. Federal police have also raided Bolsonaro's Brasilia mansion amid concerns that he might attempt to flee the country, a situation compounded by President Trump's ongoing support. In other news, President Lula has condemned President Trump's threat of tariffs on all Brazilian products, labeling it unacceptable blackmail. Economically, Brazil's imports of Chinese automobiles have surged, reaching 134,582 vehicles in the first half of 2025, a 3.6% increase from the previous year. India, meanwhile, finds itself in a challenging diplomatic position as Prime Minister Narendra Modi works to maintain alliances while avoiding conflict with President Trump. Trump's criticism of the group of emerging economies, which includes Brazil, Russia, and China, has put India in a precarious situation. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba is navigating a challenging upper house election amid rising prices and U.S. tariffs, factors that may dictate his political survival and the country's future direction. Support for the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, is waning, compounding the pressure on Ishiba. He is also facing challenges from right-wing politicians who are questioning his immigration policies and the increasing presence of tourists, foreign workers, and Chinese property investors. Ishiba has pressed U.S. Treasury Chief Scott Bessent for robust trade negotiations to secure a beneficial agreement, with Bessent reportedly optimistic about achieving a favorable tariff deal, despite concerns. Smaller Japanese firms express confidence in their ability to adapt to Trump's tariffs, leveraging their specialized market niches. The Japanese markets are preparing for potential instability in bonds, stocks, and the yen if opposition parties gain traction. Economically, Japan is encouraging China to increase its foreign investment quota following the relaxation of capital outflow regulations. A summit between Japan and the European Union is planned in Tokyo to deepen their partnership. Rapidus is progressing on 2-nanometer technology, bolstering Japan's semiconductor ambitions amidst questions about U.S. commitment to defending Taiwan. Socially, a growing trend shows Japanese women marrying South Korean men, influenced by K-dramas, improving economic equality and matchmaking services, with 1176 marriages recorded last year. In Nagasaki, a new bell has been blessed at a cathedral to replace the one destroyed during the U.S. atomic bombing, marking the completion of its restoration almost 8 decades later. Japan summer festivals, including Kyoto's Gion Matsuri and Tokyo's Sumida fireworks, offer a blend of history and cultural spectacle. Internationally, kimono sashes from the Palestinian embroidery Obi project blend Japanese materials and Middle Eastern designs in Gaza. The sunken WHAM Japanese warship Terazuki has been discovered off the Solomon Islands at a depth exceeding 800 meters. United Kingdom. The UK government is pushing to modernize UK democracy by lowering the voting age. The UK has also placed sanctions on Russian military intelligence officers and units for their involvement in the 2022 theater bombing in Ukraine. Alongside the European Union, the UK is increasing pressure on Russia concerning the war in Ukraine, specifically targeting its energy sector and its shadow fleet of aging oil tankers. 2 UK charities, the Kasner Charitable Trust, KTT, donated about £5.70 million via UK Tormet to the Bnei Akiva Yeshiva High School in Suzia, an Israeli settlement in the occupied West Bank, a donation endorsed by the Charity Commission. Furthermore, New Zealand echoes the UK's condemnation of Russian cyber attacks. The leaders of France, Germany, and Britain are building parallel diplomatic institutions to protect Europe as President Trump withdraws from the continent. President Emmanuel Macron of France, Prime Minister Keir Starmer of Britain, and Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany are central figures in this effort. WHAM, Russia and Ukraine. The Kremlin has indicated its agreement with Ukraine on the need to speed up peace talks. Prior discussions between the two countries in Turkey led to an agreement to exchange prisoners and soldiers' remains. Intensifying pressure on Russia regarding the war in Ukraine, the European Union and Britain are targeting Moscow's energy sector and its fleet of older oil tankers. The UK has additionally sanctioned Russian military intelligence officers and units linked to the deadly 2022 theater bombing in Ukraine. France and Germany. President Emmanuel Macron of France, working alongside Prime Minister Keir Starmer of Britain and Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany, are establishing parallel diplomatic institutions to safeguard Europe as President Trump pulls back from the continent. Israel. 2 UK charities, including the Kasner Charitable Trust, KCT, through UK Tormate, have donated approximately £5.7 million to the Bnei Akiva Yeshiva High School in Susia, an Israeli settlement located in the occupied West Bank. The Charity Commission approved this donation. New Zealand stands with the UK in condemning cyber attacks launched by Russia. Venezuela recently orchestrated the release of 10 US citizens and permanent residents who were incarcerated, achieving this through a prisoner swap with the United States. The agreement involved the return of over 250 Venezuelans. These individuals had previously been deported from the US and subsequently imprisoned in El Salvador. Shifting focus to El Salvador, it was revealed that nearly 200 Venezuelan men were deported to an El Salvador prison under the Trump administration, with the U.S. agreeing to pay $6 million to El Salvador to house approximately 300 Venezuelan migrants. As part of the agreement, El Salvador will now return some 300 Venezuelan migrants. The United States, under President Trump, sought this agreement, and this exchange is a positive development for Nicolás Maduro, furthering Trump's goal of bringing home Americans detained overseas. Germany has proceeded with the deportation of 81 male Afghan asylum seekers to Afghanistan. This marks the second such deportation since the Taliban regained control. Germany is simultaneously pushing for stricter EU asylum regulations and increased deportations. Germany, along with several EU partners, has agreed to toughen asylum rules. These changes will permit deportations even to countries where individuals may face persecution. Chancellor Friedrich Merz has declared his coalition government stable foundation and noted its progress in the first 10 weeks. In other news, the International Criminal Court reported that a Libyan man accused of crimes against humanity and war crimes was arrested in Germany. Turning to Belgium, a linguistic disagreement on a train has highlighted the intricacies of the country's language laws in the Flanders region. This incident underscores the challenges of managing a nation with French, Dutch, and German as official languages. United States. Donald Trump has initiated legal action against Rupert Murdoch and the Wall Street Journal regarding a published report related to Jeffrey Epstein. In Oakdale, Chandrakant Patel, a businessman of Indian origin, faces charges of visa fraud alongside multiple other individuals. The U.S. Visa Bulletin for August 2025 shows advancements for Indian applicants under the EB-5 and EB-3 visa categories. Family-based visas, however, remain unchanged in their progression. India's Ministry of External Affairs, MEA, has communicated to the European Union that it does not recognize unilateral trade sanctions imposed in response to the situation in Russia. Cabinet ministers from both Pakistan and India convened under the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, representing a notable interaction since a deadly conflict earlier in May with the intention of potentially resolving existing differences. Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence bears resemblance to Zen thought, especially his apparent fearlessness when confronted with death. Australia has provided Ukraine with the first batch of Abrams tanks, a component of a $245 million package designed to support Ukraine's defense against Russian aggression. Domestically, environmental groups have expressed concern over their exclusion from economic reform discussions. Only Ken Henry, chair of the Australian Climate and Biodiversity Foundation, was invited to Jim Chalmers' Reform Roundtable. The Indigenous peoples of the Milawa Malay in northwest Victoria have won a historic native title determination in the federal court, securing the first exclusive native title rights in the state after more than 2 decades of effort. On the international stage, Australian Ambassador to the US Kevin Rudd has reported that Australia is working with the Pentagon on the US Defense Department's review of the AUKUS submarine project and anticipates that any identified issues will be resolved effectively. Pakistan has prolonged its airspace closure for Indian aircraft until August 24th, according to an announcement from the Pakistan Civil Aviation Authority. The Finance Ministry communicated that successful trade discussions took place in Washington, projecting favorable economic results for both Pakistan and the United States. Simultaneously, severe weather conditions have affected the country, leading to flash floods in eastern Pakistan that have tragically claimed more than 50 lives. Across the nation, dozens have perished due to floods and intense rainfall, which has caused widespread inundation in both the urban centers and rural regions of Punjab province. Authorities have issued alerts for additional rainfall. Mexico is facing potential tariff increases from the U.S., with President Trump threatening a 30% rate starting August 1 due to concerns over drug cartels. Despite this tension, Chinese-funded factories within Mexico are expected to maintain their preferential treatment under the USMCA Free Trade Agreement, which is up for review next year, according to David Trujillo, Deputy Commercial Counselor at the Mexican Embassy in China. In the United States, tragedy struck Los Angeles as an explosion at a law enforcement training facility claimed the lives of 3 members of the county sheriff's departments. Arson explosives detail. Sheriff Robert Luna addressed the public, providing details about the devastating incident. Shifting focus to Thailand, a woman has been arrested by Thai police. She is accused of engaging in sexual relations with at least 11 monks. Her actions are believed to have violated the monks' monastic vows. Furthermore, the woman allegedly blackmailed the monks. She reportedly used secretly taken photographs from their encounters. Indonesia is currently navigating complex economic challenges, particularly in relation to competition with Chinese goods. The Indonesian government is also focusing on regional development. President Prabowo Subianto assigned Vice President Gibran Rakabuming Raka the task of overseeing development in Papua. This decision has generated speculation about its underlying political motivations. In a more unusual turn, President Subianto's cat, Bobika Tanegara, is receiving state-funded amenities and security. Spain is facing a political storm as former finance minister Cristobal Montoro is embroiled in a kickback scandal. He is accused of setting up an office connected to the finance ministry. This office allegedly took bribes from gas and energy companies. The bribes were reportedly in exchange for advantageous government policies. Meanwhile, anti-migrant riots erupted after the assault of an elderly man in Torre Pacheco. Misinformation and misleading videos online fueled the unrest, escalating tensions around immigration. South Sudan is seeing innovative solutions emerge as artisans repurpose discarded tires into affordable footwear. This initiative helps to combat the country's economic difficulties. Sudan continues to grapple with a devastating civil war, now in its second year. Aid organizations are calling the resulting humanitarian crisis one of the worst worldwide. Violence is escalating in the Kordofan and Darfur regions. Hundreds have died, and the situation is worsening. Philippines is grappling with a notable rift within the Marcos family, pitting President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. against his sister, Senator Amy Marcos, allegedly due to matters of betrayal and ambition. Meanwhile, Beijing has cautioned Chinese students about studying in the Philippines, raising alarms over public safety and reported crimes against Chinese nationals. This warning coincides with continued disputes in the South China Sea, urging students to assess security risks before traveling. Several Asian nations are racing to finalize trade agreements with the United States before President Donald Trump's August 1 tariff deadline. Analysts predict some countries may struggle to meet the deadline without major concessions. Turning to Japan, the Japan Football Association plans to join a joint Asia bid. This partnership will include other East Asian nations and members of ASEAN to host the 2046 FIFA World Cup. New Zealand is set to bolster its disaster preparedness with a $5 million investment in a new weather radar for the Nelson Tasman region. This initiative responds to recent severe flooding incidents, aiming to provide more accurate and timely weather information to residents and emergency services. Iran is calling on the European Union to avoid reinstating UN sanctions. Foreign Minister Abbas Araki wants fair nuclear deal talks with the United States. Cambodia's efforts to dismantle online scam operations have led to the apprehension of over 2,100 individuals since late June. The country's information minister announced that recent raids in 2 provinces alone resulted in the arrest of at least 500 suspects, signaling an escalation in the government's campaign against cybercrime. South Africa observed Nelson Mandela Day with chefs and volunteers in Johannesburg, crafting 67,000 liters of soup to alleviate hunger. Despite a facade of unity in their communique, South Africa's G20 presidency this year faced challenges due to the ongoing US-China trade war impacting its diplomatic effort. Iraq has completed its inquiry into drone strikes on military bases amid the Israel-Iran tensions. The report did not assign blame. Simultaneously, Iraqi authorities are struggling to identify over a dozen bodies from a deadly shopping mall fire. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro recently conducted his second visit to Haiti this year, aiming to strengthen collaborative security measures amidst the escalating gang violence crisis. In Cuba, the Minister of Labor and Social Security, Marta Elena Feito Cabrera, stepped down from her position. Her resignation followed widespread criticism of her assertion that there are no beggars in Cuba, a comment that sparked controversy given the current challenges of food affordability faced by many citizens. Liberia is witnessing a surge in popularity of kickball among women. This sport offers a space for female athletes to participate in a sporting activity devoid of male dominance and without the use of bats. Turning to Malaysia, activists are organizing weekly protests to voice their opposition to the possible appointment of Nick Adams as the U.S. envoy. The activists are concerned about his controversial social media activity and the potential effects on existing trade agreements with the United States. Nepal is set to inaugurate its pavilion at the World Exposition in Osaka this Saturday. The country will be the final participant to join the event, doing so more than 3 months after it began. South Korea is experiencing persistent heavy rainfall that has lasted for 3 consecutive days. This has forced thousands of people to seek refuge, and warnings have been issued for most western and southern areas of the country. Slovenia has legalized assisted dying through new legislation passed by its parliament. The country joins other nations, including Australia and Belgium, that have enacted similar laws. In the Central African Republic, a shooting at a gold mine operated by Russia's Wagner Group has resulted in at least 11 deaths. Finally, the United Nations Refugee Agency has warned that reductions in funding, particularly from the United States, could leave as many as 11 million people without essential assistance. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.